1. Chapter 5, Monastery. Surrounding the area are undulating mountains, with dense trees and a mix of deep and light green colors. The mountains a little further away are all shrouded in a mysterious mist. A highway winds its way through the mountains, with trees lining the sides. The enormous tree canopies completely cover the entire overhead, allowing only a faint trickle of sunlight to filter through the gaps in the leaves, creating speckled patterns on the ground. The carriage in Niss leisurely travels along the avenue. After crossing a hill, he finally sees the edge of the forest. Beyond the forest, there is a large expanse of farmland, and in the distance, a small town can be vaguely seen. After a full 3 months of travel, they finally arrived. That is the end point of this journey, the town of Adimont. When we set off, it was early spring, but now it is already summer. The farmland is lush and green, and from a distance, it looks like a large piece of velvet spread across the earth. The carriage slowly moves towards the small town. The closer we get, the more unexpected Niss feels. He had never thought before that the contradictory words of prosperity and tranquility could actually be harmoniously combined. Adimont is definitely a big town, much larger than his hometown. If a wall is built around it, it can definitely be considered a city. Niss secretly estimated that there were probably 4,000 or 5,000 households here. There is clearly a central area in this town, where there are 3 large buildings. One of them is a church, with its towering spire being so eye-catching. The other 2 should be monasteries, one of which is castle-like, square and exceptionally heavy, while the other is slightly shorter, with more angular edges, and its cruciform structure makes it look more delicate. 3 buildings are adjacent to each other, forming an irregular angle. Although the surrounding buildings are also exquisite and luxurious, they cannot compare to them. Although it is grand, it is different from the cities he has been to. It is not as orderly as those cities. Except for the 2 main roads that intersect in the center, all the other roads can only be considered as streets, narrow enough for only 2 people to pass by. The houses here are scattered, without any distinct neighborhoods. However, amidst the chaos, there is a natural feeling. Because of the messiness, there are more gaps between houses that no one takes care of, so these places have become a paradise for weeds and shrubs to grow. As a result, the whole town has a fuzzy feeling. This place is not bad, right? The old man asked with a smile. Coming here to practice is his suggestion. He had been here before. When he first came, it was to look up some information. At that time, he liked this town and had once thought of coming here to live in seclusion someday. But he never expected that he would eventually come here for refuge. Of course, he definitely wouldn't tell Niss the real reason. His reason is that the Abbey of Adimont belongs to the Benedictine order. The Benedictine sect is the most powerful hermit sect, both in terms of reputation and strength, enough to provide them with shelter. More importantly, there is a Shidu sect in Frank, which is closely related to the Benedictine sect. The relationship between the 2 sides is very close, and the Shidu sect has intricate ties with the Knights Templar. It is indeed completely different from what I imagined. Niss admits that this place has surprised him a bit. Is this even a town? It's almost no different from a city. When I first heard that this was also a town, I immediately associated it with a monastery and a church in the town, thinking it was also a rundown place, perhaps with a few rows of low houses and a courtyard. The difference between a town and a city is not in terms of population and size, but rather in how taxes are collected. If it is a city, the taxes paid are much higher, but cities have more freedom. In the case of a town, the taxes to be paid are much lower, but many things are controlled by the local lord here. The old man took the opportunity to teach Niss a lesson. As they entered the town, the number of people suddenly increased. Fortunately, their carriage was traveling on the main avenue, which was relatively spacious. 10 meters away from the monastery gate, the old man asked the carriage to stop. With their current status, they couldn't stop at the entrance. Niss took out the necessary documents from the package and then jumped off the carriage. After walking a few steps, he turned around and looked at the old man. The old man gave the little one an encouraging look, then waved his hand. This time he couldn't be of any help, everything depended on Niss himself. The monastery's door is tightly closed. It is a large door made of wooden planks, with iron bars in the shape of the character embedded on it. Although the iron bars are painted, many areas have become rusty due to the passage of time. There is a small door on the right half of the door, and on it, there is a 3-inch long, 2-finger wide window for observation. Niss knocked on the door. I only heard a soft sound of swish, and the small window was pulled open. A pair of eyes looked out from inside. They were young and sharp eyes. "I am here to check in," Niss said. Those eyes looked him up and down, and after a while, with a creaking sound, the small door on the right half of the door opened. Niss bowed his head and stooped, passing through the small door. As soon as he entered, the door was closed again and the latch fell down. The person guarding the door is dressed like a monk, and appears to be around 17 or 18 years old. He has a head of golden curly hair, and there is a slight fuzz on his lips. He greeted a group of people in the distance and immediately someone ran over. "Can you watch for a while? This is a newcomer, I'm taking him to see Minister Anthony," the duty monk said to the person who ran over. Complete the handover of work, with the duty monk leading the way and Niss following behind. He looked around in all directions along the way. Nis certainly knows that this is to symbolize that monks in the monastery are far away from the secular world. Some monasteries even have a whole wall on the outside. The church loves doing this kind of superficial writing the most. The current Niss is no longer the same as 3 months ago. It took them 3 months to travel this far, not because they couldn't walk faster. The old man wanted to teach him some things, so they traveled at this speed. The 3 months allowed him to learn a lot. Every night, the old man would use the wisdom activation technique on him. On one hand, it would activate his wisdom, and on the other hand, it would make it easier for him to remember what he had learned during the day. Sometimes, the old man would also impart some relevant knowledge into his brain. Now he is becoming more and more mature in his thinking, completely incomparable to people of the same age, and even many adults in their 30s and 40s cannot think as meticulously as he does. According to the old man, he now has the foundation to become a prophet. A true prophet must first be a wise person, at least having the shadow of a wise person. A wise person, even a small wise person, will definitely see things differently from ordinary people. His first impression of the monastery is simple yet profound, but once he enters, the people and atmosphere here give him a completely different feeling. In the courtyard, the monks were all gathered in small groups, either playing and laughing or engaged in idle chatter. The corridor at this moment was also filled with a noisy buzz, appearing unusually chaotic. Perhaps this was due to the small windows and relatively enclosed space in this area, as sound travels better in enclosed spaces. Similarly, the more closed the environment, the slightest restlessness becomes very apparent, and monks are the most leisurely group of people, easily influenced and becoming restless. This monastery is filled with restless melodies from top to bottom, inside and out. Niss was brought into a room, and the duty monk explained the situation to the people inside before leaving. He had to go back to guard the main gate. This room is equally dim and gloomy, following the style of the entire monastery. The decoration here is also exceptionally simple, with only a layer of clear varnish on the wooden floor and a coat of lime on the surrounding walls. Apart from a row of cabinets against the wall and a wooden table in the center, there is no other furniture. The deacon named Anthony was sitting at the table, engrossed in writing, seemingly having no time to pay attention to Niss. Nice to know, this is clearly intentional. This guy is not ignoring him because he's busy, but intentionally leaving him aside to give him a taste of his own medicine. Generally, when encountering such a situation, people who have not experienced it initially may not have any feelings. However, as time goes on, they will become increasingly anxious and confused. In the end, they may even feel at a loss and believe that they must have done something wrong. To deal with this move, it's actually very simple. Niss waited for a moment, which is the most basic courtesy. Seeing that the butler seemed to have no intention of paying attention to him in a short period of time, Niss simply stood there, silently reciting the prayer. In these 3 months, the old man has instilled into his mind all the basic things that a priest needs to know. Now it's up to him to turn them into his own true memories. For a priest, the most important thing is over 150 prayers. Prayers are not only used to communicate with God and influence people, but they are also crucial for obtaining divine power and invoking magic. The old man told him that according to the requirements of the Templar Knights, even if a priest in the order is shot with an arrow, he must be able to recite the prayers undisturbed. Early priests who wanted to join the knights even had to undergo a test. They had to step on a piece of burning charcoal and recite a prayer. Don't say nice, even the old man himself feels incredible, at least he can't do it. With his eyes slightly closed, Nice stood there with his feet slightly apart, gradually disappearing from this world. Prayer is a way to communicate with God. By praying in the right way, a special force field will envelop the body, allowing the person praying to enter a transcendent state. The deacon felt this. Admont Abbey is a prominent monastery in the Holy Empire. Although its ranking is not very high, it is considered to be in the middle. As a large monastery, it naturally possesses great strength. A steward like him may not be considered very powerful, but his perception is definitely not lacking. He certainly understands what Nice is doing, and he can even guess which prayer Nice is silently reciting from the surrounding fluctuations of holy power. He knew that his idea of giving the newcomer a tough time had definitely failed. But at this moment, he couldn't back down immediately, otherwise he would lose face. The steward continued to bury his head and write his things. Half an hour has passed. Nice has already recited more than 10 prayers, and they are all very obscure, difficult to pronounce, and famously hard to memorize. This is definitely not easy. General pastors only need to memorize about 40 to 50 prayers, most of which are the simplest and most commonly used ones. The deacon couldn't help but speculate on Nice's intentions. Could this kid in front of him be trying to show off his talent? Or is it a protest against him? If it is the former, he doesn't mind. If it is the latter, someone who has just arrived dares to have such an attitude towards him, it must be because they have a strong background. The deacon immediately felt trapped in a difficult situation. If he were to stop writing at this moment, not only would he fail to gain the other party's favor, but he would also be looked down upon. Continue to write with a stiff scalp. By this time, that steward's mouth is already full of bitterness. Time passed little by little, and the following prayers were not as long as the previous dozen, so Nice quickly recited over 70 prayers. That deacon finally couldn't hold on any longer. By this time, how could he not understand that the little guy probably had already memorized all 150 prayers in his mind? There are only two explanations for this. One is that this little guy is a devout believer who has become obsessed, commonly known as a fanatic. The second explanation is that there is someone behind this little guy, and at least one person of bishop-level status has bestowed wisdom upon him. Anyway, he can't afford to provoke either possibility. Don't be fooled by his appearance and prestigious position. In reality, people like him don't have strong connections. To put it bluntly, he is just serving others. In the monastery, there are many positions that don't exist. Every day, people there focus solely on their spiritual practice. On the contrary, those with influential backgrounds wouldn't care about such trivial benefits as the position he holds. After realizing this, he deeply regrets his choices. This grudge was formed inexplicably. The deacon put down the pen in his hand and asked in a calm tone, "What can I do for you?" Nice didn't say anything. He directly handed over the document in his hand. Despite his young age, after unlocking his wisdom, his maturity is no less than that of an adult. He just lacks some life experience. He knew that the steward had actually given in, but now that he was trying to curry favor with him, it wouldn't have a good effect. So he decided to ignore him and find an opportunity to improve their relationship in the future. And his response is just this lukewarm attitude. There is no need to appear resentful, as that will only make the other party come up with countermeasures. There is also no need to be overly friendly. A person should never be too easy to talk to. His father is the best negative example. The documents submitted from Nice include 2 letters of recommendation from bishops, Nice's birth certificate, and proof of joining the church. Neither of the 2 recommendation letters mention Tanis donating his property to the church. Although it is a great act of kindness, delving deeper into it would raise many associations that are not beneficial for the church. However, because of this, it caused a misunderstanding for the opposite deacon. He originally suspected that there was someone behind Nice, but he didn't expect 2 bishops to suddenly appear, which completely changed the situation. If there is only one recommendation from a bishop, it could be considered a personal relationship, but it's different when there are two, because that means owing double the favor, with the same result. So there is only one possibility: this little guy in front of us is someone specifically cultivated by a certain faction. Looking further down, the deacon became even more certain of this, because after joining the church, Niss chose to become a monk. Hermit is also known as an ascetic. Becoming a hermit means giving up all power, not just secular power, but also the power of the church. Hermit monks do not hold any positions in the church. At most they can only become the abbot of a monastery. Unlike other monks who can apply to become priests, then become a bishop of a diocese, and if given the opportunity, perhaps even become an archbishop or a cardinal. With a solid background, there may even be a chance to touch the throne of the Pope. Generally speaking, only those who are extremely devout to God would choose to become hermits. If not, it is for some special purpose. The hermits give up so much, but they also gain some benefits. They are closer to God than ordinary monks, and their prayers are more powerful and more likely to get God's attention. The most direct manifestation is that the hermits are all very powerful, and hermits of the same level have much stronger abilities than ordinary cultivators. Moreover, hermits' cultivation levels also improve rapidly. You actually chose to become an ascetic. The deacon pretended to be surprised and took the opportunity to change his originally cold attitude. I hope to be able to get as close to God as possible. Niss appears exceptionally devout. He learned this set from the priest of his hometown church. Compared to the old man Simon, the priest appears absolutely more devout and compassionate, worthy of being called a model among priests. Only after knowing the details will one understand what a hypocrite he is. It's a pity that you don't belong here. This monastery is divided into two parts. This place is actually a seminary, and the person who brought you here just now is a student studying here. Some of them are monks, but many others come for different purposes. There is also a secluded monastery in the mountains. When do you plan to go in? I will arrange a guide for you. The deacon first expressed regret, and then appeared quite enthusiastic. His implication is that Niss can go to the monastery whenever he wants. Niss doesn't mind and readily agrees. This is a way to improve their relationship, and sometimes accepting benefits is a way to bring people closer. I have an old servant who is loyal to me. He has been with me all the way here. I want to arrange a place for him to stay first. Niss made a request. As the steward wanted to show kindness, he naturally hoped to gain a little more benefit. The steward became increasingly convinced that Niss had a background, as even the servant who served him was always by his side. Most likely, this servant was also responsible for coordinating information between both sides. No problem, there are some properties belonging to the monastery in town. Your servant is so loyal, surely a reliable person. I happen to need someone to manage the warehouse. The steward threw out a fat job. Even if the person in charge of the warehouse is naturally timid and dare not take too much, they can still make some adjustments in terms of quantity loss, which can definitely ensure a worry-free life. Niss is certainly happy to accept such kindness. Still, it was the duty monk who led Niss and the old man to a courtyard on the outskirts of the town. Indeed, it was a warehouse. In a large oil consumption ceiling, it is filled with all sorts of miscellaneous things. There are food, bedding, candles, towels, clay pots. In short, everything is available, and different types of things are neatly organized in one area. Just as they entered, they saw a gloomy-looking person walking towards them, holding a large package in his hands. You don't have to guess to know that there is obviously no shortage of people managing the warehouse here. The old man named Simon has taken over this person's position. This is a job with a lot of benefits. No wonder this person looks so gloomy, obviously hating the old man to death. Take whatever you need yourself. Anyway, you guys are taking over midway. Even if there are discrepancies in the items in the warehouse, it can still be explained. The duty monk and Niss got along well, so they secretly discussed the situation on the side. The duty monk left, and when he left, he took the horse and carriage with him, which originally belonged to the church and were borrowed when Niss arrived. Close the main gate, go through the warehouse, and there is a courtyard behind. In one corner of the courtyard, there is a separate small house, which is where the warehouse keeper lives. This arrangement is obviously for fire prevention. Even if this house catches fire, the warehouse will be fine. Because it is a warehouse, the surrounding walls are relatively high, at least 3 meters. Niss noticed that the door was not locked, but then he thought to himself that there was a main gate outside, so it didn't really matter whether the door here was closed or not. Pushing the door open, he immediately felt a strong sour and pungent smell hit his nose. The room is small, with only one wall having a window. The lighting is not sufficient, so it appears dim inside. There aren't many things here, but they are arranged in a messy manner. The person who was responsible for watching the warehouse before was obviously lazy. There is no bed here. Instead, a wooden board is laid in the corner facing the window, with some hay scattered on top. Niss guessed that this should be considered as a bed. There is a row of shelves against the adjacent wall, but they are empty. It seems that everything on them has been moved by the person just now. On the other side of the wall, there is a table and 2 long benches next to it. This place is not bad. The old man walked around with great satisfaction. All he sought was a place to stay. The environment here was quiet, and there were usually no people coming to the warehouse. Once the outside gate was closed, it felt like a secluded space, more like a place of retreat compared to the monastery with its narrow windows. In the yard, Niss was sorting out his luggage. He planned to leave behind those 2 blankets because he was sure he could get new ones. He also left the wash basin, pottery, and other things for the old man, as he didn't need them anyway. He picked up the long sword and looked at the chainmail. These 2 things were not very useful, but he intended to keep them as souvenirs. He also stuffed the few balls of thread into his pocket. After looking at the room, he walked out and casually waved his hand, isolating the surroundings. Then he said, "The most important thing now is to complete the ordination ceremony quickly. Only then can you be considered a true priest. You haven't forgotten the tips I told you, have you?" "How could I forget?" Niss smiled and said, "On this journey, you've said it at least 20 times. Don't mind me being long-winded, even though it's not very important whether those tests can be passed or not. Even if you fail all of them, the growth of holy power won't be much slower. But I still hope that your performance can be better." The old man reiterated his instructions. Niss nodded. "Put yourself in someone else's shoes. If he is recruiting servants and 2 people behave completely differently, one being mischievous and lazy, while the other is hardworking and sincere, he will definitely value the latter more. Even if the wages and benefits are the same, there will surely be some differences. In the future, if there is an opportunity for promotion, the latter will have a greater chance. I have already helped you with everything I can. From now on, it's up to you." Perhaps because the separation is imminent, the elderly person becomes chatty. "I won't be by your side, and there won't be anyone to remind you of what you should pay attention to. You have to be careful on your own." What he is most worried about is that the leisurely life of the other monks will affect Niss. After all, at his age, the little guy should be carefree. "Don't worry, I won't slack off." Niss didn't feel annoyed. His father had once advised him on many things, but it went in one ear and out the other. Now, he can no longer hear those words even if he wants to. It's best to be able to listen. The old man was quite pleased. He knew that Niss was not just dealing with him. "Finally, I want to remind you of one thing. Hurry up and find a way to contact the Knights Templar. The accumulated knowledge of the Knights Templar over 2 centuries is beyond your imagination. If you can establish contact with them and get their help, it will be very beneficial for you." The old person hesitated a little when saying this. His words are indeed correct. The question is, are the surviving members of the Templar Knights willing to help Niss? Do they acknowledge that the little guy is one of them? If it were the Templar Knights that were established just 2 centuries ago, they would definitely not have such doubts. However, now, they dare not imagine everything to be so perfect, as the Templar Knights, like other parts of the church, have also fallen. Leaving the warehouse, Niss returned to the monastery alone. After opening the door to let him in, the duty monk handed him a pile of things. Inside, there was a complete set of clothes, from underwear to robes. In addition, there were bedding, a water bottle, plates, and 2 bowls, one big and one small. All the utensils were made of brass, which made Nick feel even more aware of the church's wealth and power. "It's getting late now. Although the hermitage is not far from here, the mountain road is difficult to walk. Why don't you stay here for the night? Tomorrow, it won't be my shift, so I can take you there. That duty monk said. Niss quickly expressed his gratitude. He was unfamiliar with this place and was hoping for a guide. This guide would not only be able to take him to various places, but also help him integrate into this place as quickly as possible. No need to thank me. Taking you there will also give me a chance to rest for half a day. You have no idea how boring it is here, and unfortunately, I can't leave the monastery without the abbot's absolute permission. The duty monk had a frustrated expression as he complained bitterly towards the gate. You see, in broad daylight, even the door is tightly closed. You should know that today is Sunday. Niss naturally avoided this topic, so he switched to another topic. I heard that life here is very leisurely. Yeah, even the leisurely bones are starting to rust. If only I had listened to my father and gone to the Count de Girol's house instead of staying here. The duty monk had a remorseful expression on his face, but if he were given the chance to make that choice again, he would definitely say something different. Niss has understood, the person in front of him is the one the steward mentioned earlier, someone who is studying here for other purposes. The so-called other purposes were originally to obtain the title of a squire. The old man once mentioned in casual conversation how to become a knight. To obtain the status of a knight, one must first become a squire. And to become a squire, there are only two paths to take. Either go to a noble family at a very young age and start as a servant, gradually becoming an attendant to the noble as one grows older. Then, when one is able to go to the battlefield together, they will naturally be promoted to a squire. Walking this path, it is easy to become a knight in the future. However, there are advantages and disadvantages. Entrusting a child to someone else's home is equivalent to tying one's own family to that noble. If there is a change in the political situation, it will be very troublesome. Another option is to obtain recognition from the church. Many members of the Knights Templar, for example, choose this path. The advantage of this approach is that there are no restrictions, and you don't need to tie yourself to any particular power. The downside is that there will be fewer opportunities in the future, and even if you manage to find a lord to join, gaining their trust will definitely not be easy. Lords are definitely more inclined to trust knights who they have seen grow up since childhood. Are martial arts also taught in the monastery? Niss is very interested. Although he has temporarily given up the idea of practicing martial arts, he will definitely not miss the opportunity to see how others practice. There are many knights in this world who have had bad luck and can't find a way out. If they can't make it, they will find a monastery like this. The church won't allow these people to become monks because most of them have killed before, but they will allow them to stay here and provide them with food. However, they must work for it. Teaching us martial arts is one of the easiest and most respectable tasks for them. Only a few of the strongest among them are qualified for this job. Trust me, those guys are absolutely amazing. Will you give them a reward? No, the tuition fees have already been paid to the monastery. Of course, if they are willing to teach us a little more, we would appreciate it. By the way, my name is Luke, Sebastian, Catherine, Bettman, from Wallenberg in Transylvania. The duty monk extended his right hand towards Niss. Niss has a good impression of this person. Although the time of contact is short, he has already noticed that this person is good in all aspects except for talking too much. Niss. Hort. Cornell, I am Frankish. Niss introduced himself. Frank? Quite far away. Aren't there any monasteries there? Luke felt surprised like everyone else. Niss remained silent. He had no intention of explaining. Luke realized that his question might have touched on a taboo subject for Niss. Who doesn't have some secrets of their own? To express his apology, he enthusiastically suggested, if I were you, I would definitely take a bath. There is a bathroom here, and it will be open on Sundays. Once we enter the mountains, we won't have this advantage anymore. I heard that people in the mountains have to take care of themselves, and if they want to take a bath, they have to heat the water themselves. I will first find a room for you so that you can spend the night here. Luke estimated that it was almost time for his shift to end. Anyway, he had a reason, so it wouldn't hurt to take a little break. The row of houses on the east side of the monastery is where the monks work. The row next to the entrance consists of a chapel, prayer room, and library. On the west side is where the students attend classes and practice martial arts, while the north side is where the students reside. Along the way, this chatterbox told Niss a lot of things related to here. This dormitory building is separate from the other 3 buildings. They all look similar on the outside, but the interior decorations are much simpler. The floors are made of bricks, the stairs are made of raw wood, and they haven't even been painted with varnish. Luke takes Niss to the 2nd floor, where his room is located at the far end of the east side. The room is very small, with only a bed against the wall and a shelf extending from the windowsill. This shelf is 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, obviously used as a table. There is only one window here, which is long and narrow, so narrow that even the head cannot be stretched out. There is no glass on it, only a wooden shutter. Luke has been standing outside the door, and there really isn't enough space inside for 2 people. The rooms here are all very small, there's no way around it, that's just how the monastery is. He pointed to a row of shelves above the bed. Clothes can be placed here, the basin can be stuffed under the bed, and plates and water bottles are usually placed by the window. When you went upstairs just now, you must have seen the bathroom, it's a bit far from here. The bathroom is on the 1st floor, next to the laundry room, but if you plan to go into the mountains tomorrow, there won't be enough time. This chatterbox kept on talking incessantly. Suddenly his expression became somewhat strange. He looked around, then leaned close to Niss' ear and whispered, "Let me tell you one last thing. Today is Sunday, so if you have nothing to do, it's best to rest early and not wander around at night." "Why?" Feels strange and nice. "No reason, you haven't reached the age to know those things yet." Luke patted Niss' head and said in an elder's manner. Coming out of the bathroom, Niss felt a sense of comfort all over his body. It was the first time in 3 months that he had the opportunity to take a hot shower. Even if you stay in a hotel along the way, they do not provide hot water. The original clothes were all thrown into a bag by him, and now he is wearing the newly received clothes. Many of the students here have been sent here since they were 7 or 8 years old, so the monastery has clothes of various sizes. The outfit he is wearing now fits him very well. Compared to taking a bath, there is really nothing to say about dinner. When he went to the cafeteria, there were only 3 or 4 people eating there, which was surprising considering how big the cafeteria was. It couldn't compare to the bustling scene at the bathroom, where there was a long line. After taking a bite of the food, he understood what was going on. There are quite a few things inside, all of them are vegetables and beans. Surprisingly, there is not even a trace of minced meat, which is even more unbearable. What's worse is that the chef seems to be very stingy with salt, there is no salty taste at all. He had originally hoped that Luke could tell him the reasons behind it. To be honest, he didn't believe that the people in the monastery didn't eat at all, nor did he believe that everyone could tolerate such pig food. Unfortunately, Luke, the chatterbox, did not show up until he finished dinner. Returning to his room, Niss indeed planned to rest well. After traveling for a full 3 months, and mostly camping outdoors towards the end, he hadn't slept in a bed for a long time. It was at this moment that he realized the door couldn't be locked at all, the lock was broken. Niss wasn't worried about theft, such a thing was absolutely impossible in a monastery. However, he still intended to inform the responsible monk tomorrow. Even if he no longer lives here, it can still be considered a good deed for the next person who lives here. He had only just laid down for a short time when he heard the noisy footsteps outside. He didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, the corridor became lively, with people constantly running in and out, and the sound of doors closing from time to time. Niss climbed out of bed and walked to the door, sticking his head out to look outside. There are no lights in the corridor, only the clear moonlight shining in, so it appears unusually dark. The only thing he can see are the moving figures. Some figures are walking out, while others are entering the rooms. Something must have happened, but unfortunately he is not familiar with the people here and feels awkward to ask. The only person he is familiar with, Luke, doesn't know where he lives. Close the door again and lie back on the bed, Niss. Perhaps it was because of the noisy footsteps, his heart suddenly became unsettled. The inability to lock the door made him feel insecure, and there were no chairs or stools to lean on. He was wondering if he could use those 2 copper basins to hit. If they were too light, perhaps he could add his chainmail and long sword. Suddenly, the door was pushed open and a figure flashed in. That was a figure completely wrapped in a large cloak, with even the head tightly covered. Niss was initially startled, but then he felt a sense of familiarity. This attire reminded him of the woman who had rendezvoused with the bishop in a carriage. She also wore a tightly wrapped cloak and moved with a light, sliding step. Immediately, he thought of the many similar figures he had seen in the corridor earlier. The person who saw Niss was also surprised and said, "Where is Rufus? This is his room." It is indeed the voice of a woman, and a young woman at that. This is a male monastery, and there shouldn't be any women present. The phrase that the old man often said, "This is a corrupt era," once again popped into Niss' mind. At this point, he finally understood why Luke told him not to wander around. He had never heard of the name Rufus before, but he remembered Luke mentioning that the person who used to live here was from the same group as them, and was one of the best among them. Unfortunately, something happened in his family, so he had to rush back home. He still remembers that when Luke talked about these things, he seemed very down and had a sense of empathy. If he guessed correctly, that person's family may have already fallen apart, lost their land and title, and become penniless. Naturally, he would have no way to stay in the monastery anymore. In recent years, there have been constant wars, and conflicts between countries have become increasingly intense. The country of the Saracens in the east has also become stronger. Many once prominent kingdoms and duchies have disappeared one after another, not to mention the small nobles beneath them. He left. I heard people say that he probably won't come back again, so the duty monk arranged for me to stay here. I don't know why, but Niss felt a hint of jealousy towards the previous owner of this room. He won't come back anymore. That woman appeared unusually sad. Niss regrets a little. He has never actively harmed anyone. Perhaps he will come back after his troubles are resolved. Niss couldn't help but console. The woman was not concerned about Niss' comfort, but instead asked, "Did he leave any letter behind?" "No, he left in a hurry. You know, his family situation is very bad." Niss started to talk nonsense, but the real situation is probably not far off. "I heard about it, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. Even someone like him who is still studying would be conscripted. Actually, he doesn't have to go. He's not the eldest son and doesn't have the qualification to inherit the estate, so he doesn't have the obligation to fight for the territory." The woman's words confirmed Niss' speculation. Indeed, it is related to war. However, he didn't guess everything correctly. The person named Rufus wasn't unable to stay in the church because of his family's poverty, but rather he was conscripted and returned to his country to participate in the war. Niss feels that he has become somewhat suspicious and distrustful, perhaps because everything he has recently encountered has been too dark, to the point that he has forgotten that there is still light, loyalty, and justice in this world. He is a knight, or at least he aspires to become one. If he were to avoid battle out of fear, he would not be qualified to stay here. Therefore, I believe his approach is correct. This time, he wasn't comforting, but sincerely spoke these words. The words were powerful and impassioned, but unfortunately the listener was a woman who seemed completely unaffected. She sighed softly and said, "My heart is in turmoil. I hope he will be all right. Do you love him very much?" Niss suddenly had a hint of curiosity. At his age, he was full of curiosity about love, sex, and women. For the latter too, he understood somewhat because he had already experienced it and didn't feel anything particularly special, completely unlike what those young servants were talking about. The woman hesitated for a moment, not because she was unsure whether to say it to Niss, but because she was questioning her own heart. She had never thought about this question before. After a long while, she finally said, "No, it's not love, but I can say I like him. Rufus is very handsome, talented, and considerate. I am happy when I am with him. Life in the monastery is very dull and boring, but only when I am with him, it becomes colorful." I can't say what the reason is, but Niss is happy to hear such an answer. Are others the same? Niss pointed to the next door. He knew for sure that there were people next door, and it was also a couple, because he had just seen someone enter that room. Close enough. That woman is quite frank. She would say this, Perhaps because Niss is young, so she subconsciously doesn't see him as a man, but just as a boy. However, Niss quickly proved her wrong. Niss asked hopefully, Can I take his place? You? The woman couldn't speak for a moment, and after a while, she hesitantly said, You seem a bit too young. Niss grabbed the cloak tightly. He remembered the old man had once said that if you want something, you must strive for it. Although he was certain that the old man definitely did not mean for him to pursue a woman, Niss saw the principle as the same. The woman pulled hard on the hem of her skirt that was being held, but unfortunately, she couldn't pull it off. Maybe it's because she didn't want to go back so early, back to that lonely and desolate room. Maybe it's because she couldn't bear to refuse, so after struggling for a while, she finally gave up. I'm not interested today, but if you insist, I can rest here for a while. However, I only allow you to touch with your hands. Saying that, she sat down on the edge of the bed. The large cloak was gently taken off and placed on the shelf in front of the window. She had a very slender figure, especially her waist, which could be easily embraced with just one hand. What made Niss feel depressed was that the woman still had a thick veil over her head. It was now evening, with only dim moonlight, and he couldn't see the face beneath the veil at all. The woman slowly lay down with her back to Niss. Her movements were very gentle, with a hint of indescribable elegance. Niss smelled a faint scent, not perfume, it felt more natural. He leaned in, took a deep breath, and said, It smells really good. That woman didn't have much of a reaction, but her body seemed much more relaxed than before, without that faint sense of resistance. Niss put one hand up and placed it on the waist. Seeing that he was not rejected, he gained a little more courage and moved his hand up. Still not being rejected, he moved it up a little more, and this time he had already touched the breast. It is now summer, although it is only early summer, the weather is not very hot yet. However, everyone's clothes are not many and not thick, so the touch feels very wonderful. At that moment, he heard the woman emit a soft hum, a sound so faint that it was barely audible, yet it carried a peculiar sense of beauty. Niss was puzzled. He had been intimate with maids before, and even gone further, but it always felt dull. Could it be because he had matured and things felt different now? Or perhaps, it was because the person was different. His hand trailed down the woman's arm. This is definitely not a powerful arm, it can hardly feel any muscles, only a soft and slippery sensation when touched. The woman's hands are also very soft, with slender and long fingers. She also keeps her nails half an inch long, and the edges of these nails have all been carefully trimmed, feeling very smooth. Indeed, the hands were completely different from those of the maids. The maids' hands were rough and calloused. Nick's desire suddenly vanished, and now he was more interested in the woman's identity. His hand reached into the veil and gently brushed through her beautiful hair. The woman had a hairstyle with hanging ears, and it seemed like two spinning tops were hanging by her ears. Her hair was fine, soft, and thick, with a faint fragrance. His hand brushed against her bun, gently twirling it around her earlobe. This area was delicate and full, feeling soft to the touch. As his fingers flicked, the woman's body trembled slightly, emitting a delightful hum from her nostrils, becoming even clearer, and the intoxicating taste became more intense. The tail finger of Niss scraped along the curved eyebrows a few times. Her eyebrows were long and obviously carefully groomed, resembling a crescent moon. Suddenly, the woman's eyes blinked, and her long, curled eyelashes brushed against his fingertips. Unfortunately, the room was pitch black, and he couldn't see anything. He could only imagine a pair of large and lively eyes, which must be very beautiful. Not only does that woman have big eyes, but her nose bridge is also very straight, and the contour of her nose is very clear. Coupled with her pointed chin, he can already roughly outline the profile of this face. Do you know what I look like? The woman's slightly reproachful inquiry echoed in Niss' ears. She didn't really care because she would never appear in public, and very few people even knew of her existence. However, women are naturally inclined to keep their secrets hidden. After a slight annoyance, she grabbed Niss' hand and placed it on her chest. She would rather let the little guy take advantage of it than expose her own identity. Moreover, she is indeed very lonely and does not resist the comfort of the opposite sex, even if this person is younger. Part of her previous hesitation was due to her bad mood, but more so because of her reserve. Now she is taking advantage of this opportunity to let the little guy succeed naturally. With such tacit approval, Niss didn't hold back. He first tentatively squeezed the 2 piles of soft jade, experiencing a smooth and elastic sensation that he had never tried before. The breasts of those maids are definitely much bigger than this, but they are a bit rough, and you can feel that there are small bumps on them. He used to hear servants say that all those ladies and young ladies would bathe with milk. He didn't believe it before. Even if he had money, it would be impossible to be so extravagant. But now he believes it. Perhaps only by bathing with milk can one maintain such smooth and tender skin. Men always want more and more, especially when they are young. Without realizing it, Niss' hand has already slipped into the shirt. The feeling is completely different when there is a layer of fabric between them, as the fabric feels a bit rough. Similarly, for that woman, the feeling of being separated by a layer of fabric and the feeling of direct touch are completely different. The former only makes her heart beat faster, while the latter makes it difficult for her to breathe. She gently closed her eyes, her nostrils constantly flaring, and her breathing gradually became heavy. At this moment, her mind was already blank, leaving only those mischievous and restless hands, and the itchy and tingling sensation left by the places they touched. The other hand wandered around, sometimes gently tickling her armpit, sometimes sliding onto her back, from the shoulder all the way down to her waist, then circling to the front, lightly rubbing her belly. Suddenly, her body stiffened as that hand slid down her belly. For some reason, she felt scared and quickly clenched her legs together. Embarrassed by her reaction, the woman angrily grabbed one of Niss' hands and lightly bit her wrist. This is both a refusal and a warning, but there is something very subtle about it. She bites the hand that is resting on her breast, leaving the true culprit at the scene of the crime. The 2 people were tightly pressed together, able to hear each other's heartbeat. After a moment, the woman grabbed the hand that was bitten by the snake and placed it back in its original position, using her elbow to hold it in place, preventing the hand from moving freely. The same was done with the other hand below. The other hand of Niss could vaguely feel a gap, but it could no longer move forward even half an inch. He could only gently touch and occasionally scratch it with his fingernails. He knew that he had reached the limit allowed by the woman, so he could only play around on the edge of that limit. 2 people lay quietly, lying close to each other. After a while, the sound of a bell rang out. The woman suddenly trembled and let go of Niss' hands, but she herself sat up. Niss also sat up in confusion and glanced at the moon outside the window. It was then that he suddenly realized it was the sound of the dawn prayer. The sound of the bell is like a signal, and once again, the noisy footsteps and the sound of opening and closing doors can be heard outside. The woman sat up, tidied her disheveled clothes, and put on the large cloak again. "Are you coming next week?" Niss asked, filled with anticipation. The woman hesitated for a moment, waiting until she was about to leave, before she softly said, "Maybe I will come." Please continue reading The Great Hidden, too.